we go.
And so the TED program is doing research on the lesser yellowlegs and Alaskan bats. I've been working with bats for about 9 years for the Department of Fish and Game, but just doing research with the lesser yellowlegs last year. You'll see a difference between when I present yellowlegs and when I present bats, because I know and have done many, many presentations with bats, but this is my first one with lesser yellowlegs. Okay, so lesser yellowlegs and bats, part of the coastal refuge biodiversity. Okay, Chris, you can move it forward. So we're going to start out with the lesser yellowlegs research. And the point of this slide is it's a huge collaborative effort. We are working, so Katie Christie is the lead of this research. So ADFG, we're partnering with USGS, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, University of Alaska Anchorage, as well as we have Canadian partners from Trent University, University of Alberta, and Environment Canada. Okay, go ahead. Some of the life history characteristics of this very charismatic bird species is it's a neotropical migrant. And so it goes from its breeding grounds in the north all the way to South America. They stop over in northern South America for the winter, as well as the southern part. You'll see an image of this in a little bit. It breeds in boreal wetlands across North America, and Alaska provides important breeding habitat for this bird. In Anchorage, the coastal refuge is an important chick rearing location. So what happens is when the chicks hatch, they're highly mobile, and the adults pretty much immediately start taking them down from the wetlands into the coastal refuge. There's a lot of food. They eat invertebrates, and so there's a lot of food for them along this coastal refuge. Forward, please. And you may wonder, why study lesser yellowlegs? What's the deal with them? Well, only significant trend estimates are shown in this map image. And so I'll start with the background. 90%, there's been a 90% decline of the species since 1970, and 50% decline is projected in the next 15 years. So they're pretty much in trouble. The image of the map, the red area, that would be Alberta and Alaska, those are declines, so by 5.3 and 6.23%. The blue ones in Saskatchewan and, oh boy, I forget what the other one is next to Saskatchewan. Anyway, that's a positive. It's an increase in their population, 10.47 and 3.49. That'll come to me as soon as we switch slides. Okay, go ahead and forward, please.
I'm like, I should know that too.
I know, I can't think of Manitoba.
Yes.
All right. So this is a slide that's animated, so we'll see whether it works. So lesser yellowlegs, current and future threats. Boreal wetlands are drying due to climate change. Chris, can you see if you can get the animation to work? Oh, yeah, good. Okay. So it's predicted that the sea level will rise by 0.2 to 0.8 meters by the year 2100. Go ahead, Chris. Approximately 200,000 shorebirds are harvested annually in the Caribbean Basin in northern South America. Lesser yellowlegs is the most widely hunted species using the Western Atlantic Flyway. Another issue is pesticides and contaminants are used liberally in these areas where the birds use, like the wetlands, drainage ponds, and agricultural fields. Okay, go ahead, Chris. I'm just watching the time. I'm sure I don't go too fast or too slow. Okay, 1 second, please. Okay, so shrinking ponds in subarctic Alaska is a big issue. And so the image on the right, the picture of Alaska, these are sites that we have historic images. And so if you look at the images on the right, these are two wetland sites. One is on top of the other. So the first column is from 1950. The second column is 20 years later, the 70s, and you can see there's a huge decrease of wetland area. But then you jump another 30 years, and you can see there's very little water left in these wetlands. And a lot of that issues with that could be their prey is no longer able to survive in this area. Could you forward, please, Chris? And so some of the implications of the shrinking wetlands for invertebrate prey is that one group of these insects is actually, the biomass is increasing, the chironomid, but all the other groups are decreasing. And so the graph on the right, this is through time of biomass, and so 2 different years from 1985 to 1989 is the gray, and then 2010 to 2012 is the white. So you can see in all but one is decreasing.
That's
And yeah, that's the food that they really need. So that's a real big problem. Go ahead and forward, please, Chris. Okay. Another really big problem, as I mentioned, is it's the most widely hunted shorebird in the Atlantic flyway. Suriname and French Guiana harvest tens of thousands of birds annually, and Barbados harvest is 5,700 to almost 20,000 birds annually. And Guadalupe harvest exceeds 8,000 birds annually. So you can see in this image of the map of the different places where these birds stop over on their winter grounds, and a lot of them get shot. Okay, go ahead and forward, please.
We should send them food or something.
So the conservation status of this bird is it's a species of greatest conservation concern by the state of Alaska. And it's red listed. Can you hear me okay?
Mm-hmm. Want to make sure.
Yeah. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, good. Okay. It's red listed by the Alaska Species Ranking System in the Audubon Alaska 2017 watch list. Okay, go ahead and forward, please, Chris. So you're probably wondering, what are our objectives in this research? One is to determine the overwintering locations and the migratory routes of these birds. What we want to do also is to get genetic material, so we're taking blood from this animal, and find markers to see if the different populations are distinct enough that we can take tissues from the harvested birds and find out where they are coming from. So it's kind of a genetic tracking of this bird. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Want to obtain estimates of survival of adults by mark and reciting, and enlist citizen scientists in occupancy studies, such as the Birds and Bogs Citizen Science Project. We want to recommend conservation actions, and we will publish results and share with conservation groups in South America to see if they can do anything to control some of the hunting that's going on. Okay. Can you forward, please?
Huh?
Chris, can you, oh, there you go, thank you. And these are our sites. So I mentioned that we have American as well as Canadian partners. So one of our sites, of course, is Anchorage and Canudi National Wildlife Refuge, Yellowknife, McClellan Lake, Churchill, and James Bay. And that's why we need such a huge collaboration. This is a gigantic area we're looking at. And so these are the groups of the populations that we want to find distinct populations, because if we can take the tissue of the ones that are hunted, maybe we can figure out whether they're coming from James Bay, Anchorage, or what have you. Okay, please forward, Chris. So we're using this new technique. It's Pinpoint Argos GPS. And what these do is they communicate with the satellite. So they will communicate their location, their GPS or GPS location, and we can know exactly where they are. So the pros of this is they're accurate to 10 meters or less. And so we put one of these on a bird, and somehow the bird slipped out of it, in a huge wetland and we lost it. So we waited until we could download the locations and we were able to find this thing in this amazing wetland, and it was deep in the moss underneath a small tiny spruce. So it's amazing how close we can get to it. We have a user-defined schedule. What that means is that we can tell it how many times to talk to the satellite. And so there's a trade-off here to having a lot of locations or having battery life. So the more it speaks to the satellites, the battery dies more and more. And we want the batteries to be good at least until they get to their wintering grounds, and we'd like them to come back again. This is really important, as they don't require recapture. With that said, we are going to try to recapture it so that we can take these off of them, so they don't have to wear it until they wear off. Who knows, it could be with them for the rest of their life. The cons is they're very costly. That's why we searched for the one that was lost. $1,500 per pinpoint. They're too heavy for small species, and like I said, limited battery life. And so when I say too heavy for small species, this shorebird is actually kind of on the edge of the weight for it. And the female shorebird of this species is a little larger than the males. And so oftentimes we'll only put these on females depending on the size of the males. Okay, please forward. So we have a first year results. Now that we don't have to recapture these birds, we actually have results of where they're going. It's very exciting. In Anchorage, we caught 43 adult lesser yellowlegs and captured 24 chicks. They were all banded, including the chicks. The chicks only had little metal bands. And we took blood samples from the adults and other samples such as feathers and claws. We determined 12 nest fates, and we deployed 19 transmitters. Okay. Can you forward, please?
Yeah, I'll put it.
So this is pretty much hot off the press. This is where our birds went. And so since last late fall when they left Anchorage, the red they're from the birds from Anchorage. You can see where they went in the James Bay area where they went, and the single one caught in Yellowknife. And so I've enlarged the image to show you one of our Anchorage birds stopped over in some of these areas that are heavily hunted. So that's saying that probably some of our birds are actually, more than one, are going down there. Also, the one from James Bay also is on that area. Does that make sense? It's kind of a cool map.
That's very cool.
And so these are spots just from the satellites downloading and then mapping it. Okay, forward please. What time?
It's weird they go.
So moving forward in 2019, what are we up to? So you see this image of the yellowlegs, and it's got a code, an alphabetic code on it. It's green. That's because in Alaska we use green codes. And then we put a small color band on the upper leg and then an aluminum federal band on the bottom. So this is so that we can recite them. You can see the antenna coming off the tail of the bird, kind of going to the left. So we want to recite them. We want to deploy an additional 60 pinpoint tags. We want to locate and monitor their nest. And as I mentioned, enlist citizen science volunteers through the Birds and Bogs program. In fact, we are going out next week. The Birds and Bogs, I'm helping out with that, all ready to start reciting these birds. Our earliest season is starting really soon.
Wow.
Okay, could you forward, please, Chris? And that's all I have for that. And I can take some questions. I'm going to check on my time.
What do they hunt the birds for down there? Food?
Yeah, so that's a good question. The locals will hunt for food, but you have people from France coming down to hunt for sport.
Huh.
Yeah.
So do you think some of the reasons for their decline might be because of the deforestation in Canada and all that tearing up the ground for the coal bed methane stuff?
Yeah, I'm sure development is a big part of it. Absolutely.
When you were talking about reciting them, are you actually talking about capturing them and
Yeah, that's
reading their information?
I was a little vague there. So the ones that we also have devices called GPS, and they kind of they measure the sunlight, and so you can tell on a latitudinal scale where they are, but we have to actually recapture those ones. The other ones, we have some birds that are only banded. We don't need to recapture those unless we want to put a pinpoint on them. The ones that have the pinpoints, we don't have to recapture them, but we're going to attempt to. Did that answer your
Yes,
question?
yes.
Okay, good.
So,
You
because
use a net to
I'm thinking about a
capture
mark
them?
and recapture.
Yeah, it's like mark and recapture.
Okay.
But it's mark and reciting. That's
Yeah.
kind of the capture part, is the reciting, if that makes sense.
That's good to keep in mind for that lesson. We'll remember that.
Okay,
So you
all right,
have
and
to
so
catch
my,
them?
was there another question? I'm so sorry.
Do you try to catch them with nets? How do you?
Yeah, we catch them with mist nets, but we don't do it like we do normal catching of birds. We try to catch the young, and we put the young in a small bag with a hand warmer, like a net bag, and then we put them in the wetland, and we put the mist net over it, laying flat instead of up, and then we also put chick calls under the net. And the adults will actually go underneath the net to try to protect their young, and then we can catch them.
Oh, that's
So
kind of
that-
like
that's-
do that. Better than shooting guns with nets
I
around.
can't hear her.
She says it's
And
better
what
than
kind of
shooting.
bug is that
Yeah.
Shiro, whatever it is, that isn't decreasing in the wetland area?
Could you speak up a little bit, Kitty?
What
Sorry,
kind
could
of
you-
bug is that in the wetlands that isn't decreasing that Shiro mine or whatever it is? You had all those bugs that were decreasing in that wetland shop, then you had that one that hasn't been.
Is that the mosquito that's not decreasing? And the on the top water bug that's not
You're talking
decreasing?
about the prey?
Yeah, what is the macro that is increasing?
It's not a mosquito. I'm not really sure. It's an order, it's a group, but I actually don't really know.
But it's something that they eat.
Yeah,
Is it
but
bug
if you
that
look at the picture of it, it looks like doesn't have a lot. It's very flat and thin. It's not plump. I don't think it's going to have quite the same food value as the bigger, more robust. It looks like it has a lot of chitin on it, and so they can't really digest that, and not a lot of insides that they can digest. That's just
Okay.
from looking at the picture and my guess.
We could look it up, though.
Yes,
Okay, good, that's it.
very good question.
So you consider this a close, these birds, as far as pollution, are they eating a lot of the plastics and things like the other shorebirds?
That's a good question, and we're not addressing that. I think to address that, you actually have to kill the birds and cut them open. So
Okay.
that's not what we're doing. But yeah, probably, I would not doubt it.
Yeah.
Styrofoam beads.
Yeah, well, yeah. Okay, are you ready to move on to bats?
Sure.
Oh, yes.
Okay, I can get a bit chatty about bats, so I do want to watch the time. I've got 20 minutes. Is there a way I can watch where I don't have to keep turning it
Yeah,
on?
I will.
Oh, I could probably, okay.
You got it.
All right. So, bats in Alaska. I'm first of all going to talk about bats in general, and then focus in on bats on Alaska, and then focus in on bats in Southeast Alaska. Okay, could you forward, please?
Bats and selfies? No.
So, I'd like to talk about bat basics first.
Oh, there's his eyes.
Is she talking to me? Okay. So when I talk about bats, I really like to dispel bat myths. There's a lot of talk about bats. First of all, bats are not blind. In fact, they can see quite well as we can. Bats do not suck blood, but vampire bats do drink blood. In fact, that's the only food that they can eat. But what they do is they make two little incisions, and it's usually farm animals that they will get the blood from. And then they lap up the blood, kind of like a dog drinks water. And they drink about, I think it's 2 tablespoons is all that they take when they do drink the blood. And bats are not attracted to human hair. And if you see the cartoon, this is the perspective of a bat. Bat nightmares. Also, bats are not related to mice. A lot of people think they are. In fact, they're more closely related to humans than they are to mice. Bats may carry rabies, but not any more likely than other mammals. I say that, but I still want everybody to treat every bat like it has rabies because it is a really deadly disease. There's been 6 cases of bats having rabies, not people, but bats. When we get hold of bats that are acting strangely or what have you, we have to dispatch them and then send them to our vet just to make sure that they're okay. And so there's been 5 to 6 cases, and all of those are from Southeast Alaska. Oh, thank you. When did I start?
I wonder why they're more south.
Oh, for this, okay. All right, go ahead and forward, please, Chris. I had to throw this in. A lot of people ask me about bats and diseases. What can we get from bats? Well, there's the disease histoplasmosis, which causes a fungus that can cause, it's a respiratory syndrome, severe acute respiratory syndrome. But we don't have the environment here. That's like in the Mississippi or Ohio valleys where it's really hot and moist, but not here. And that's a fungus. White nose syndrome is another fungus, but bats get it, people do not. Fruit bats are thought to be the original hosts for Ebola and Nipah, which are really deadly viruses that causes brain fever. And then, of course, rabies. And as I said, 5 to 6 documented cases of bats with rabies in Southeast Alaska. Okay, forward, please. Okay, so this slide, I wanted to kind of put things in perspective about biodiversity of bats. They're in the order Chiroptera, and then there's 2 suborders. There's the Microchiroptera and the Megachiroptera. Microbats there are about 1,070 species. These are your insect echolocating, well, not insect necessarily, but echolocating bats. Whereas the megabat, they're like your fruit bats, and there's 170 species of that. So there's a total of 1,240 bat species worldwide. Now think about mammals. There are about 5,000 mammals in the world, so this is approximately 25% of the species in the world are bats.
Wow.
And that's second only to rodents. Rodents are actually a bit higher than that. And also we have 43 bat species in North America. And compare that to something like 55 deer species in the entire world, 36 Canidae species in the world, and only 8 bear species in the world. Just kind of put a little perspective on that. They're pretty cool animals. Okay, could you forward, please? So the order Chiroptera means hand wing, and if you look at this image, you can see that bats have the same bones in their wings as humans have in their hands. Their flight is distinctive from birds. They fly at slower speeds, and they're more maneuverable. This helps them to catch their insect prey. Okay, could you forward, please? I like this slide because it kind of demonstrates how long their fingers are. So if you put your hand to your hip and imagine your fingers extending much longer than your legs, that is how big their hands are. And of course, that's for flight. Okay, could you forward, please, Chris? And their diet, so 70% of bats eat insects. Tropical bats eat fruit and drink nectar. 1% of bats are carnivores. And 3 species of bats feed on blood. As I mentioned, those would be the vampire bats. Hey, can you forward? She asked a question, okay. Well, the feeding strategies of the bats, insect-eating bats are insectivorous. Bats that eat frogs, mice, and other bats are carnivorous, and fish-eating bats are piscivorous, nectar-eating are nectivorous, fruit-eating are frugivorous, and blood-eating are sanguinivorous. And so if you look at the different pictures, you can see, I don't have the nectar eating bats here, but I do have the rest of them.
Sounds like wine.
Okay, could you forward, please?
Wine, sangria.
Of course, I have to touch on echolocation. So bats find food by producing sound waves from their mouth or nose, and the sound wave will bounce off the object, the insect usually, and back into the bat's ears or nose. They can detect objects as small as a human hair. Pretty incredible.
Oh.
Hey, could you forward, please? And you might wonder, what are the threats to North American bats? Of course, wind turbines kill a lot of bats. Pesticides also kill bats. Think about what insect-eating bats eat are pests, and so that can move up the food chain. Human disturbance is always a problem. Habitat destruction also. But the biggest thing, these are all pretty much nothing compared to white nose syndrome. Have you heard of white nose syndrome before?
No.
Oh, really? Okay. You can forward this slide, please, Chris. Okay, it's from the fungus called Pseudogymnoascus destructans, or white nose syndrome. And you can see the bat on the left. It has this fungus on its nose, its ears, and its wings. And it's, like I said, a cold-loving fungus, and it lives in caves where bats hibernate.
Oh.
It spreads from bat to bat, and bats use up their fat reserves in the wintertime when they're trying to hibernate. It's thought that they wake up a lot more often, and so that is making them lose their fat reserves. So they wake up in the wintertime, and they're hungry, and they're going to die if they don't eat, so they leave the mines and caves. Of course, there's no insects around for them to eat. They tend to die outside the cage. You'll see every spring or late winter, early spring, lots and lots of dead bats at the mouth of these things. But when there's a bat, once in a while, there'll be a bat that can go to their maternity roost. They make it there. And so that is something that we want to think about. This is not in Alaska yet. You can see on this map where it's spread. If you look, there's a little circle in New York. That's where it started. And this was in, I believe it was 2006. Yes.
Yeah.
And then it radiated out. So then you see the spread from 2007 through 2010 are the blues. It's just radiating out. And then the greens are 2010 to 13. And then yellows are 14 to 15. It's just amazing how much this has moved. But in 2017, here in Alaska and western states and western Canada, we're thinking, oh, we've got lots of time to deal with this. But in 2017, a bat was found with white nose syndrome in Washington state. And since then, more bats have been found with it. So it really opened up our eyes here in West states and in Alaska and western Canada. It's like, it might be
Got a
coming
lot of
here.
bats in Texas.
Okay, could you forward, please? And why should we care about bats? Bats can save millions of dollars in pest management, all for free. Somebody actually did a study on this and put a dollar value on bats. One insectivorous bat can eat thousands of bugs in a single night. So think mosquitoes. They're yeah, exactly. They're pollinators of flowers and dispersers of seeds. And they are a huge part of the planet's biodiversity, like I mentioned before, about 25%. Could you forward, please? Now I want to focus into Alaskan bats. We have 7 species of bats here. We've got the Keens, the California, long-legged, this beautiful silver-haired bats. They're gorgeous bats. That's the picture in this image. The Yuma bat and the hoary bat. And the hoary bat we know because we have detectors out that pick up their calls, but I'll talk about that in a little bit. And then we have our bat. Can you forward, Chris, please? And this is what I call our bat because it's the only bat known to breed in south central, northern, and western Alaska. Hey, could you forward, please? And so there are a lot of questions about our bats. What are they doing? Where are they found? How many bats do we have? Where do they overwinter? What is the implication of white nose syndrome if it comes here? What are we doing for our bats? The image here, this was actually the video. It's of me taking a bat out of the net. It's really kind of fun to watch, but I don't think that's going to work. I'm afraid it'll blow up.
I can send it to you.
Oh, that'd be great. Thank you. Yeah,
Okay.
that would be really
I don't get
good.
any of it yet.
And so, could you forward, please? Oh, it started to play a little bit.
Oh, there it goes.
There it goes.
So delicate plucking it out of that
Oh,
net.
yeah. You can see I have gloves underneath the acetyl nitrile gloves, and we change our gloves per bat. And we follow white nose procedures just in case it's here and we don't know it.
What's in a net?
When you see the video, you'll hear the noise that
Yeah,
that bat
it
is
chatters.
making. It keeps tangling itself up too.
And
doesn't
it's
it?
biting at me. Oftentimes I let it bite my gloves because that keeps it a little calmer. Now what I'm doing here is I'm sexing it. It's really easy to tell whether it's a boy or a girl bat. Unlike shorebirds, it's really hard to tell. I'm also showing people how to do this. There are some field technicians. And then I pull out the wing, and I'm looking for scar tissue when I do that. If white nose syndrome does affect a bat and they survive, they'll have heavy scarring on their wings. That's what I'm doing here.
Gently.
Yeah, very gentle. They're tougher than what you would think, but they
Yeah.
are very tiny.
My cousin got a bat.
That's where he bites me.
Yeah. Tiny teeth.
I think that should be it.
Uh,
You could forward. I don't think that there's anything else.
I don't know.
Oh.
I didn't live close to my cousin. We went over there one time. I don't know if they
Okay, so
made him.
we ran a program for 10 years. It was a citizen science program where if you saw a bat, we wanted to know. We also wanted you, if you could, take a picture of a bat to verify it. And so this picture on the right is a bat that was taken by a citizen scientist and sent to us. We got approximately, I think, 50 images, and we sent them all to UAF, Museum of the North, and that's where they are stored. And so we actually published a peer-reviewed article in the Northwestern Naturalist in 2014 on the citizen science work that we did. And it's called New Insights on the Distribution, Ecology, and Overwintering Behavior of the Little Brown Myotis in Alaska.
Myotis.
And then I want to talk a little bit about the results of that. So can you forward, Chris, please? Okay, these are some of the results. The image on the left shows, if you can see kind of the gray stripy area, and that's where the known distribution was previous to the study. You can see in Kotzebue, White Mountain, and St. Michael, that's a range extension. They actually are further out than we knew. And then Samiti Islands actually is another one. That's the south one, kind of by Kodiak. So that's a southern range extension. And the image on the right, those are maternity roosts. And thanks to citizen scientists who called and said, I have a ton of bats in my house. That if it's over 20, we defined it as a maternity roost because non-breeding females and males will not roost in big groups. There may be a couple or three, but 20 is actually a lot. And so if you see the hollowed out stars, those are roosts verified by pups that they actually had young bats in there. Okay, could you forward, please? Some more of the data. We've had calls about bats almost every month. A couple of them are a little bit, I'm not really sure about, but some of them I really am pretty sure about. But you can see these are winter bats in White Mountains, St. Michael. So the way we define winter bats are bats that were seen in October through April.
Wow.
Okay. Could you forward? Oh, wait, sorry. So the graph on the right shows that most of our bat observations are in late June, July, September. This is when bats become volant, and what that means is when the pups start to fly. So we're going to see more bats. And also they're just trying to figure out how to be a bat, so they may fly during the day. They'll behave a little different, so we're going to see more of them during that time. Okay, could you forward, please, Chris? Now we're doing some more research. This is a bat recorder, and we are running bat recorders around, it's in the valley mostly and in Anchorage. Okay, can you forward, please? Okay, this is kind of a complicated graph, but it's very interesting. And so the red, green, and blue that you see, stripes going down the bottom, those are the minimum temperature, mean temperature, and maximum temperature. The kind of orange and yellow curve that you see, that's when the sun sets, and the yellow above that is when it rises. And so you have time on the left, and you have the date on the bottom. So basically, between sunrise and sunset, where it's black, that's where it's 200 or plus more bats that are seen on that given time period. And so these are 15-minute increments. And I guess take home for that is that the density of the bats are most where we have the shortest days, which makes sense because they have a lot less time to hunt. They don't want to hunt during the day because predators can get them. Another thing that's kind of interesting, though, if you go into August and you're looking at the sunset in the upper part, there are bats that are staying out later, and those I think are the volant, the pups that are coming out. Okay. Yeah, do you understand this graph? If you have a question, go ahead and ask. Okay. Could you forward, Chris, please? These are our locations, bat detector study sites. The ones in green, don't worry about that. The pink ones are ones that we have out for long periods of time. The three green ones, we might be looking at for something else. But the pink ones, or the salmon-colored ones, are the ones that we really do have a lot of data. These are some of the ones in the valley are run by citizen scientists also. Okay, could you forward, please? So we are wondering, do our bats overwinter? When I first started working for Fish and Game, I thought, no way, it's just too cold. We don't have huge caves or mines. They can't be overwintering in this area. Well, since that time in Norway, there was a study that found that bats are overwintering in scree fields. In Colorado, higher elevations, so they're overwintering in boulder fields. Southeast Alaska, Karen Blavis has done a lot of work, and she has found that they overwinter in root wads and scree fields, which is really cool. In South Central Alaska, bats fly early in the season, so we see them early, and they leave late in the season, as late as October and as early as March. This is kind of making me think, yeah, maybe they are doing something similar and overwintering in rock fields. This image of the bat on the right, you can kind of see its wings sticking out. This bat was found by a couple of geologists. They were out on October 21st in Petersville. It was cold, there was snow on the ground, and they went up to a rock. They wanted to take a sample, they hit it with their hammer, rock fell out, and this is what they saw. I would say that's a hibernating bat. So who knows? It might be a really young bat that doesn't really know what it's doing. What are the implications of white nose syndrome to our bats? Well, if bats are hibernating like this little dude is, just kind of alone in a rock, it's not having bat-to-bat contact. If that's the case with a lot of the bats, and that's the same in South Central Alaska, Karen Blavis She's just finding just a few bats going into these screed fields and root wads. So that might be good news for us. It might slow down the spread, and it might give them a chance to survive this. Let's see, bats in the lower 48 hibernate in the large groups, and that's why they're getting hit really hard, especially on the East Coast. And we don't know what our bats do in the winter. So on the East Coast, millions of bats are dying. They are in a lot of trouble. Okay, could you forward, please, Chris? So you may wonder, what can I do for our bats? You can build a bat house. And when I first started working here, we didn't know if bats would use bat houses in Alaska. They don't in Southeast. It's too cold and wet. This picture is from a citizen scientist that went to Brooks Camp, and they had tons of bats. And so she took this picture and sent it to me. It's a multi-chambered bat house. It's pretty cool. You can also tell us if you find a maternity roost. What we're trying to do now is monitor maternity roosts to see if any bats come to them early, and then swab for white nose syndrome if they are. You can also run a bat detector. I'm very, very busy, and I got a bunch of new bat detectors, not a bunch, but a few, and we want to put them out on the landscape. I just put a couple out the other day, and it would help if people were interested in changing out batteries. It might mean a walk or what have you to get to these areas. And if you can go to the next slide, Chris, please.